Happy birthday to the AV Geeks Lunchtime Streaming Show. Happy birthday to the AV Geeks Lunchtime Streaming Show. Happy birthday, dear AV Geeks Lunchtime Streaming Show. Happy birthday, AV Geeks Lunchtime Streaming Show. And many more. Alright. It turns out I didn't have any birthday candles at the archive except for this one, which was presented to me many years ago. So yesterday I was so busy trying to find footage of Julius Caesar being assassinated for the Ides of March that I didn't realize that the first lunchtime streaming show that we did was March 15th, 2020. It was a Friday. It was called the AV Geeks Quarantine Show. And the idea was, during COVID, we were going to do a show every Friday to celebrate, well, not to celebrate, but to give a distraction to what was happening in the headlines. And turns out, over the weekend, we came to realize that me going into the archive with my wife, who has some health issues, wasn't going to work. Because if I was going to go into the archive, then I was going to have to live in the archive. This is before vaccines and all that. So I quickly kind of thought about what I would do, and we started doing a streaming show out of the basement of my house. And I did that initially to kind of give me something to do during the day, but it actually proved to be pretty important for me, because I collect these films, and I collect them because I want to show them. And we did what we did so that I could show the films, because there was no live shows 2 years ago. And so I feel pretty privileged and lucky to be able to have been in that situation, to where, one, I had a fast internet connection at the house, two, I had the ability to show digitized stuff, and then eventually schlep over a telecine behind me to the basement and do a show every day. It gave me a reason to put on pants every day, is what I tell people. So, and I could not have done it without you. So thank you so much for tuning in and commenting and sharing and all that. So there's lots of anniversaries we seem to celebrate here, like what number film are we on and what number show are we on. But the fact that we've been doing this pretty steadily every weekday. I think maybe we missed one or two for whatever reason, but we did a pretty good job of covering all the weekdays. And moving forward, I'm going to keep trying to do it. It might be something where we have more pre-recorded shows if I'm out of town. I know they're not the best, but it's a way for me to keep doing what I'm doing. So there you go. In honor of this, let's celebrate the state of the NASA Center with a short, odd video clip. I love that. Maybe I should do one for the archive. Anyways, let's watch a film about Galileo's laws of falling bodies. All that NASA stuff made me think about physics. So here we go. Enjoy.
Gravitation draws all objects toward the Earth's center. As long as the Earth has existed, objects on the Earth have been acted upon by gravity. But laws that govern freely falling bodies, suspended bodies like this pendulum, or other bodies in motion, were not discovered until the latter part of the 17th century. Galileo, often called the father of modern science, is given credit for helping to develop these laws of motion. According to legend, the Leaning Tower of Pisa was used by Galileo. Supposedly, he dropped objects from the top of the tower and observed how fast they fell. Regardless of whether Galileo made these experiments, we do know that he did research in the physical sciences. Here in this modern physical science laboratory, we will recreate some of his experiments. For example, he dropped objects of different weights and sizes and compared their rates of fall. We will make the same kind of comparison by using slow motion photography. Based on such observations, Galileo concluded that all objects fall at the same rate of speed or acceleration, regardless of size or weight. Objects that weigh very little, such as this feather, seem to be exceptions. But Galileo believed that any differences in acceleration were the result of air resistance. Today, we can prove that Galileo was right by using a glass tube from which the air has been removed. In the vacuum that results, the feather and a coin fall with identical acceleration. Here is the action repeated in slow motion. Another problem challenged Galileo. He wanted to describe the speed of a falling body at any instant. Freely falling bodies move so fast they are difficult to observe, so Galileo devised an inclined plane, much like this one, to reduce or dilute the speed of fall. Galileo used a water clock to time his experiments. Here, a modern electric timer is used to click off the seconds as the object falls. And this device releases the object, such as the steel ball, and simultaneously starts the timer. The distance the ball rolls in each succeeding second varies depending upon the elevation of the plane. Now we will see the action in slow motion. After 1 second, the ball has traveled 10 centimeters. In 2 seconds, 40 centimeters. In 3 seconds, 90 centimeters. In 4 seconds, 160 centimeters, and so on. Here are the experimental results. Using similar facts, Galileo noticed that a relationship existed between the distance traveled and the time squared. Using our experiment as an example, at the end of 1 second, the ball has moved 10 centimeters. At the end of 2 seconds, it has rolled 10 centimeters times 4, or 10 times 2 seconds squared. At the end of 3 seconds, the distance is 10 times 3 seconds squared. And at the end of 4 seconds, 10 times 4 seconds squared. As a formula, s, the distance, equals 10 times the number of seconds squared. Expressed in terms of acceleration, s equals 1/2 the acceleration times the seconds squared. This formula applies to all objects in motion, such as the ball moving down the inclined plane. For the special case where an object is falling freely instead of rolling, the formula s equals 1/2 at squared becomes s equals 1/2 gt squared, where g is the acceleration due to the full force of gravity. Although the Tower of Pisa experiment, so often associated with Galileo, may never have actually taken place, there is no doubt that Galileo deserves an honored place in the history of physical science. He was a pioneer in experimental work, and he developed formulae to represent some of the basic laws of motion.
Yeah, I love me a period piece. They're like, well, this is a science film, so we don't really need to spend a lot on costumes. And so, yeah, we'll just use this beard. Pretty great. All right, behind me, I said before, we have the telecine. If I pointed it like that, yeah, there it is. And from that, we can transfer films live and broadcast them to you. So this is making haiku, or making haikus. I don't know if haikus is plural for haiku. Somebody get back to me on that. All right. Anyways, making haikus. Enjoy.
Don't use really good ones all the time, because I think that'll scare everybody off. So sort of, mix them up so that there are some good ones so that somebody can really tell what a nice haiku can sound like, and then so some that are, not so great, that somebody can realize that they can do something.
When night is finished, the sky erases the moon and puts back the sun.
Early morning light, coming through the clouds and trees, waking all the birds. Haiku is, like, if you wished you were to be it, you can write a poem about it.
A tree to somebody is so different to what a tree means to somebody else. So you can look at a tree and feel something about it and write something about it. Sparkling drops of light through an obstacle of trees. Happy reflections.
Reflections. Sometimes you forget it isn't real until the water stirs.
Reflections are gone. In the end, they come again, waving goodbye to me.
What is a haiku?
It's a Japanese or English poetry with 3 lines and 17 syllables, 5 syllables in the first, 7 in the next, and 5 in the last. Trees, bushes, and deep, puny little waterfalls all over the place. Now, that was a haiku. The trouble is, if you don't know how to spell very good, and it's a tricky word that you don't know how many syllables are in it, like paleontologist. It's easy if you clap your hands or snap your fingers or go paleontologist. That's 6. That's a lot. I am cold, I can be hot. And that's 7.
It's just short thoughts, and you just write down the short thoughts, really. You can't use as many words as you'd like to.
I think you just sort of have to get the whole idea and sort of make it small.
It's real fun once you get to know it. You know, at first I thought haiku was going to be hard. Oh, that's going to be hard. And then now it's sort of hard and easy. Ooh, what's that? Oh, Harry. It looks like it's underneath the sea, huh? It reminds me like Wizard of Oz. It reminds me about the Godzilla movie.
It looks like a monster.
Ew.
Hairy and gruesome. A hairy mad monster swamp. Hairy and scary.
Hairy and gruesome. Weird and terribly ugly. Frightening weird. Hairy and gruesome. Something you could climb on. It's hairy and scary. Hairy and gruesome. And yucky and terrible. Hairy and gruesome. It's like a sense of touch, sense of feel, sense of taste. It's a lot of things of sense.
I look at something in nature and decide how I feel about it, or what kind of feelings it gives me, and write it down. If I don't like it, I can't write about it. So I have to pick something out that I like. It sort of comes from looking at something helps, or thinking about something. And
Yeah, we were watching leaves and maybe just have them sit down and ask them to try and write one. I think anything could be a good subject for haiku, even like a pebble or something.
You're going to write a haiku about leaves. Write something that you feel. Write the 3 lines and try to get as close as to the right number of syllables in each line. Now let's pretend you want to be water. Water sees people and fish. Water rolls and rolls down fast. I am the water.
I am falling down. It's fun to be water, splashing down the rocks.
Beautiful, everything.
But have you ever thought what it does, and does it sleep, or where does it go?
The water looks so clean and powerful.
Does it get dirty? How does it get clean? How does it feel when you get a fish in you?
Rushing joyfully, stopping only to recall why it's time to go.
Babbling water, rushing between the rocks. Where are you going?
Does the water laugh? It surely cries. Maybe when it cries, it might be the ocean. How does it feel when the sun sets into you? Or how does it feel when the moon rises?
Imagination creates new ideas from past experiences. From watching hands picking cotton, could you imagine a machine which will do the work of hundreds of hands? From watching a faltering pen, could you imagine a reliable fountain pen containing ink for whole pages of writing? Men watching soaring birds have imagined themselves in flight, looking down on earthbound creatures. From the earliest days, imagination has helped in the creation of new inventions. Applied to the problems of lighting, imagination produced this, and this, and eventually modern, efficient light from tubes. Everywhere around you, you will find imagination at work. Imagination in music. Imagination in art. Imagination in books. When you read books, you bring life to them with your imagination. You get more out of your reading when you use 3 types of imagination: what you see, what you hear, and what you feel. For example, when you study geometry, you use visual imagination to help you. That cube and cylinder are easier to work with when you can imagine what they look like. Visualization, or forming a mental picture, is one form of imagination. Or say you're studying Spanish. Auditory imagination will help you learn new words. Imagine the sound. Hear it first in syllables.
Hacienda.
Then put the syllables together into a complete word.
Hacienda. Hacienda.
Imagining what things sound like is an important way your imagination can help you. Here's another way. You're thinking about baseball, and your imagination is giving you the feeling of the game. Tenseness, readiness for physical action, alertness, activity. You're all set to play ball. This is kinesthetic imagination. And it's another way imagination can serve you if you use it wisely. Imagining the feeling of a baseball game will enrich your appreciation of a baseball story. And your studies. Well, imagination properly used can help you learn your studies, too. Now, how skillful is your imagination? Let's try out your visualizing. Close your eyes. Can you imagine a picture to go with these sounds? How did you do? Did you imagine something like this? Now let's try your auditory imagination. Can you imagine sounds to go with these pictures? Now compare them with these. How did it sound to you? Here's another. What does it feel like to run up a hill like this? Can you imagine? Did you feel your body reacting? These types of imagination, visual, auditory, and kinesthetic, can enrich whatever you do, and you can develop your skill in using them. Let's start to read a short story. Let's see how to use imagination effectively. First, concentrate on your purpose, the thing you want to imagine. It was a wintry afternoon. A strong wind blew the loose snow and piled it in ever-changing drifts about the front porch of a small, plain house. This is your goal, what you want to imagine. Winter, snow, wind, the front porch of a plain house. You begin by calling to mind things you remember seeing that might fit the description. You recall a plain house you have often seen. But this house has no porch, and it's not winter. You've often seen another house in winter with a front porch. And you remember another house which you saw on a snowy day. The houses you remember, none of them fits the description exactly, but you can create a house with your imagination, using the parts that fit your purpose. You use the first house you remember because it is small and plain. But you'll have to imagine it with a front porch. There. Now, imagine what it looks like in winter. And finally, what it looks like on a windy afternoon. By using visual imagination, you can create a picture of the scene in your mind. Now, what does the scene sound like? You remember the sound of winter wind, and you recreate that sound in your imagination. Now, there is one thing left to imagine. How does this scene feel? Can you feel the wind? Can you feel the cold? Try letting your body respond easily and freely. This will help build the imagined feeling. Now, have you imagined the scene you need to appreciate the story? Keep the words in mind. It was a wintry afternoon. A strong wind blew the loose snow and piled it in ever-changing drifts about the front porch of a small, plain house. Wait a minute. The emphasis is on the front porch. You have to imagine yourself a little closer to the porch. That checks better with the original description. Let's review the steps used in creating such a scene in your imagination. First, concentrate on your purpose, or on the new image you want to create. Think carefully about what you propose to imagine. Then, recall relevant images. That's the second step. Remember things you have seen, things you have heard, and things you have felt in the past that are similar to what you want to imagine. Then, create a new image, adding as much enriching detail as possible. Do this by picking out the parts of relevant images that fit the purpose and discarding the rest. And finally, check with your purpose. Test your new image against what you set out to imagine in the first place, and make adjustments in it if necessary until you're satisfied that it fits your purpose. These are the steps to effective imagination. These are the steps to follow when you read, when you write, in your speaking, in your problem solving, in your listening. Develop your imaginative skills in all your activities. Now, can you try the procedure on the next part of the story? A group of children, bound homeward from school, ran across the yard to the porch, making snowballs, laughing, shouting as they ran. How about that? Can you imagine it? Here is your start. Can you see the children in the scene? Can you hear them? Can you get the feeling of the scene? How skillful is your imagination?
All right. So this is the problem. I have this little mute button on my microphone, and if I accidentally click it twice, then it just unmutes and then mutes again. So that's what happened. So anyways, what I was saying was the Making Haiku film, narrated almost entirely by kids, and that's kind of how they did things in the 60s and 70s, is educational films started using kids talking to kids because they knew that kids would listen to other kids. They responded better to their peers. And what I said was, let's look at this cornet film that was made much earlier and see who's talking in this. And it's almost entirely voice of God narration, and someone you don't see or know who they are, and they're telling you stuff. And probably didn't translate as well. Probably was not as well received by kids. So anyways, that's what I was saying. As we know, 2 years into this, besides showing awesome, obscure 16mm films, we also have a bevy of technical problems that, excuse me, never go away. There's a complexity here. And part of it is when you tell me in the comments to unmute, I don't look at the comments until I'm finished talking. So if I'm muted, I'm going to be blah, 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 blah. And maybe I'll look and I'll see that, oh, I'm not seeing a waveform. Sometimes I won't. So I hope you appreciate that. This is what we do live. This is not a rehearsed thing. This is me doing this off the cuff. And I know that rubs some people the wrong way. Some people are like, why don't you do this? Or why don't you do that? I'm like, because I'm doing it live, baby. And I've scheduled out this time to do it. And this is what we're doing. And we're going to sit and watch some films. Sometimes it's going to run great. Sometimes it's not. And that's just kind of the way it is. So sorry, but not sorry. Because if I did have to rehearse it, then that would take up more of my time. And that doesn't... I can't pay the bills that way. Anyways, what do we got? I got another film set up on the Telecity. And so we're going to try this again. I think this film's from the 70s. I'm not sure. It's called Sycamore Street. Enjoy.
And the Papas were coming home after work. It was over on Sycamore Street, just a couple of blocks from here.
Oh, my apples are burning! Help! Help! Fire!
It all started on the 5th floor, where the Hagopians live. Mrs. Hagopian is a great cook, you know. Without her glasses, Mrs. Kiak can hardly see. Down the hall, there was trouble in the Abramovitz apartment. That cute baby Esther had been crying all day. Then Mrs. Abramovitz found out why. Then there was trouble in 5C, where the Beans live. Telephone trouble. Then things started to happen on the 6th floor, too. Little Bronwyn Burns found the key to her father's car. You'll never believe what she did with it. Things even went wrong for the animals that day. Look what happened downstairs in 4B when Benji Popper went to feed Rusty. Next door to Benji, the Kind's cat thought her pan was great with its fresh newspaper lining.
That Mr. Kynes. Well, when he found out that his evening newspaper was lining the cat's box before he had read it, he roared like a tiger. You know Jimmy O'Brien. He stayed up almost all night. Yes, that sure was a time for things to happen on Sycamore Street. I think I'll walk over there and see just how things turned out.
There you go. Sycamore Street. You know, so this is a language arts film. So kids are now supposed to write about their neighborhood or something that happened in the film, or, you know, that's what this is all about. It's designed to provoke discussion. This next film, I think this is a Cornet film. Maybe it's an EB, not sure. World Trade for Better Living. This is kind of interesting because when we think about things nowadays in terms of supply chains and the availability of products, this is a film that says, like, oh, the fact that we're buying and selling things in the world improves our way of life. And we have certainly seen that with different things like the scarcity of microchips or various types of products or things getting stuck somewhere, either because they haven't been manufactured yet, or they're all kind of in a logjam, or because a giant ship is stuck somewhere, which supposedly happened again, but this time in North America. It was the same company, though. It's crazy. Anyways, yeah, let's look at this convincing film about how great world trade is. Enjoy.
This is my ship. I've skippered her a good many years, sailed her over a lot of ocean. She's a good ship, but you'll find her like in any port from Baltimore to Singapore and back. What's our cargo? Well, it's anything that goes into trade. Anything that anyone wants to buy or sell anywhere in the world. And you know, people almost everywhere trade with other countries. They have to get what they want. Yes, we deliver the goods they need to people in every part of the earth. And most folks couldn't live as they do without world trade. How do I know? Well, I visited a lot of places in my time. I've asked questions. And this is what they say.
Trade with the world? Well, Captain, here in Britain we depend on it, you know. After all, when we shop for a bit of meat or anything else in the way of food products, we are likely to find it comes from Denmark or Australia or South America. What's more, the stuff we work with in our factories often comes from other countries too. Yes, putting it as simply as I can, I'd say we in Europe have to trade, or die.
You say it's food they need, Captain. Here in South America, we have more than enough of that. Plenty of good beef cattle and grains and other crops. But we too must trade, for we need manufactured goods. And most of these we must get from you. We may not trade to live, but we must trade to live better.
Live better? Truly, Captain, that is our great need here in the lands of Asia. We are poor by your standards. Most of us are peasants, yet we grow scarcely enough to feed our many people. As for our other needs, most of us still use the simple things we make ourselves. If we are to live better, we must have many of the products of your Western world. We need goods from your machines, and we also need the machines to make more goods for ourselves. For all this, we must trade.
Well, Captain, here in the United States, we seldom think about the need for trade, except perhaps when we're looking at British woolens, or when we're trying out a new perfume from France. Of course, we know about coffee and sugar and products like these. But what would living be like without all the other things we import? There's the bauxite we put into aluminum ware. There's the natural rubber and other raw materials and the manufactured products from abroad that we depend on for everyday living. For instance, how many people driving cars know that some 200 materials from other countries go into the making of them? Believe me, we need trade as much as anyone.
Yes, trade's an important thing to most of the world's people. Ties us together closer than we realize. For instance, he just mentioned sugar. Well, we just brought in a cargo of sugar from down the Caribbean. You know, much of the world's sugar supply comes from the West Indies. And many's the time I've seen the people at work on the great plantations, cutting the cane and hauling it into the mills. This is where the traders take it over. They ship most of it to Europe and North America. We bring it north to the ports. Now over there, they brought in another very necessary cargo. A shipment of tin, all the way from the mines of Malaya. Here's where we get more than half the world's supply. If it weren't for these men of Malaya who dig the ore and wash and work it into pure tin, we'd be hard put to it for the familiar stuff that we use to cover all those tin cans. But now, come along. I'll show you something else about trade. This country exports a great many essential items, too. Right here, for instance, they're taking on a cargo of wheat. And you know, we in North America, in the Argentine, furnish a good part of the world's wheat supply. We grow most of it out on the western plains. Wheat by the millions of bushels. Yes, here's grain enough to take care of the needs of goodly numbers of the world's people. Now here they're taking on a cargo of cotton. This is one of the biggest articles in trade. And a good part of the world's supply is produced here in the United States. Not long ago, it took a lot of people working by hand to pick the cotton in these fields. But today, One man can do the job with a picking machine. After they've taken the crop to the local gin where it's cleaned of seeds, a good deal of it is shipped along to the ports, bound for Manchester and other textile centers where they make it into cloth. You know, it takes a great many people doing a great many things to keep the world's trade moving. If we could eavesdrop on all the trading going on everywhere in the world today, it'd probably sound like this.
Singapore, November 26. Hoy, President Roosevelt.
de frigidaire a été reçu.
Paracalote, telegrafista, tonnen,
250 ton magnesium.
experiments, litras elevatation.
It's 4 pounds. Conto Chase National Bank, Nueva York.
Yes, Captain, the trade of the world is a vast affair. But its principles are just the same as trade in your own hometown. In every community in the world, you have a division of labor, with different people producing different kinds of goods and exchanging them with one another. For if everyone tried to produce everything he needed, no one would have enough of anything. Now, the same principle applies to the world community, with people of different countries also producing and exchanging different kinds of goods. Certain areas contain vital raw materials, such as the tin ore, the oil, the copper ore, the cotton, the wool, the natural rubber, the manganese, and other products the world needs. There are also certain areas most suitable for particular crops, such as the bananas and the coffee, the sugarcane and the cocoa, the tea and the meats, the dairy products, and the grains, and other necessary foodstuffs. This makes for specialization in the world's production. Most of the world produces various raw materials and foodstuffs, but little manufactured goods. These areas produce most of the world's manufactured goods. The people of these industrial areas have to obtain many of their foodstuffs and raw materials from the countries that produce them. Likewise, they supply manufactured goods to the people of the rest of the world. But the greatest volume of world trade is between the industrial nations themselves. These nations, producing the most, demand the highest standard of living, and thus have the greatest demand for goods. For in the world, as in our own community, the more goods we produce and exchange, the more goods we have to consume, the higher our standard of living can be.
Right. That's why I can't understand why so many people seem to be against trade. I think of it every time I see the customs inspectors checking cargo, here or at any other port. All these regulations on imports and exports, these tariff schedules, these quota systems and embargoes, all these restrictions on certain types of cargo just to keep goods out of the country. It doesn't make sense to me.
Well, Captain, the nations of the world working together in such international conferences as this have recently done much to lift the barriers to trade. Many nations have agreed to lower tariffs and reduce controls, while programs such as the Marshall Plan have helped many nations to restore and increase production, laying the basis for a healthier world economy. But international cooperation depends upon public opinion, and when citizens anywhere meet to talk about trade, the discussion often goes like this.
Henry, we're concerned with these editorials you've been running. These pieces on trade.
Gentlemen, I wonder whether you've really read these editorials of mine. I suppose it's natural for people to want protection against competition. But when it comes to our foreign trade, you want to remember that we sell to other nations as well as to buy from them. When people like you put on the pressure for more protection, asking for higher tariffs and other restrictions on foreign goods, then people in other countries do the same. They just don't buy our goods.
Why not? If they need our goods, they'll buy them.
Not if they can help it. For one thing, They face the problem of the balance of payments with us.
Balancing their payments? What's that?
The balance of payments. Now, here. Maybe this will give you a rough idea of it. My point is simply this. In the long run, other nations pay for their goods with the goods and services they sell us. They can't do this profitably if we raise high tariffs against their goods, or if we use quota systems to limit the amount of goods we buy, or if we refuse to trade with other nations except the ones that will barter with us.
Barter? How's that?
Barter. Well, when a government barters, it makes deals directly with other governments to swap certain specific amounts of goods. Now, just about every nation in the world today is seriously hampering trade through one or another of these methods.
Well, what's the answer, Henry? Just open our doors to everybody's goods?
No, but the problem is to encourage a growing volume of trade under conditions reasonably good for the people of all nations.
And just how can we do that?
Well, look here. One necessary condition is to do away with barter and encourage a many-sided trade moving relatively freely among all nations. Let's consider a single situation. Barter is two-way trade. Now suppose a nation like Denmark is buying machinery from the United States on a strictly two-way basis. She may get dollars to buy this machinery by selling goods directly to the United States. However, this two-way trade enables her to buy only this much machinery. But suppose, on the other hand, the United States pays dollars to a country like Malaya in exchange for such products as tin. Malaya, in turn, pays some of these dollars to Britain in exchange for her manufactured goods. And Britain pays some of these dollars to Denmark in exchange for dairy products. This way, Denmark would have the money to buy much more from the United States than she could trading directly. And this has been a many-sided transaction, giving more goods and services to every one of the nations concerned.
Yes, I can see that. But what about the competition between labor with low living standards and labor with high living standards? You get into trouble there.
Well, in the short run, we might have to consider that. But in the long run, we must remember that people who produce any article efficiently have no trouble from competition. Now, this is true of highly productive workers in mass production industries, of course. But it's also true of the people who are producing types of goods that cannot be as easily produced anywhere else in the world. And it's true of workers who are producing articles requiring special skills that have not been developed in other countries.
In other words, let's raise our productivity everywhere, and let the people of every nation give us the things they can produce best. That's sensible.
Yes, gentlemen, that is sensible. For wherever people produce efficiently, they are adding to the world's wealth. And whether they are weaving nylon in America or weaving rugs in India, they are producing goods useful to us all. The world is rich in its vast variety of resources and strong in its reservoir of human labor, able and willing to transform them into goods. All we need are the tools and the machines to produce, and the skills to give the world a better product. From the Australian rancher growing the wool, to the Danish farmer producing the bacon, from the worker packing beef in Argentina, to the craftsman making machine parts in Sweden, everyone in the world has his special contribution to make to the world's wealth, its supply of goods and services. And when through trade with one another we exchange the goods and services we produce, we are making better use of the world's wealth, making more goods and services available to all, satisfying more of the wants of people in industrial nations, and fulfilling more of the needs of people in less developed countries, giving us all a higher standard of living. Yes, more production and better exchange provides more goods and services to more people
everywhere in the world.
And we'll see that they get it. That's what I mean about trade. The more of it there is, the better it is for you and me and everyone else. We're all in the same boat. And she sails steadiest when she's hull down and full steam ahead.
So, it's kind of crazy. That film, it's trying to explain the concepts to young people about world trade and how great it is. But you have all these old, like, white men talking about, oh, it's so great, increasing productivity. And then you have that graphic of money going from one country to another, and it's all, the icons are white men. And, it's not that far off. The idea that you had people who would go to these countries, and then they would kind of work with whatever was happening locally, and then they were the middlemen that would then trade with the Americans. But it would leave... the only brown people in that film, and people of color, were the laborers. And so, I don't know. I could show this film in a class now in college, and people would be probably furious. But, I show these films. They have a historical precedence, but they do sometimes get it way too right, more than they know. Anyways, speaking of imports, coffee. We like coffee. It keeps us going. It caffeinates our brains when we have a minor sinus thing going on. You can buy us coffee at ko-fi.com/avgeeks. You can also go to avgeeks.com and buy DVDs. And you can hit the like button, the subscribe button, the thumbs up, all that stuff. Again, thank you so much for joining us today. We have more films tomorrow. A lot more films. New films showing up all the time. Like a box showed up with like 5 new films the other day. And so, new stuff is showing up all the time. And I'm happy that you're there for me to show them to you. So everybody have a great rest of your day, and we will see you soon. Take care.